Surprises have always annoyed me. My stomach turned before I could even reply when my mother texted, "Come by the house tonight at 6. We have something special for you." My birthday wasn't that day. It wasn't a vacation. I had just finished a 10-hour strategy call with overseas partners on a Tuesday in March. I just wanted a glass of wine, a nice shower, and some quiet. Rather, I found myself arriving at the house that I had assisted in financing 7 years prior. Like usual, the porch light flickered. Thanks to the landscaping service I still paid for, the lawn was well kept. Even so, I still felt like a visitor in my own household as I rang the bell. When the door opened, Sabrina was standing there. She was my older sister. She was grinning broadly, wearing a faux enthusiasm that resembled high-end perfume. "Look who arrived at last." Loud enough to reverberate throughout the foyer, she said. In addition to hugging me as if we hadn't just texted yesterday, she also didn't bring up the $8. Oh, she had borrowed from me the previous year. The dining area was decorated as though it were for a magazine shoot. Napkins folded into swans, wine glasses shining, and a candle centerpiece casting gentle light across everyone's faces. Richard, my father, raised a glass from the head of the table. "To family!" With a broad smile and weary eyes, he called out. I gave a courteous nod. Everyone applauded as if this were commonplace. As if this was my first visit home in months. As if they didn't disregard all of my previous attempts to establish boundaries. I sat down close to the end, between my cousin Mark and Aunt Janice, who had only ever contacted me for employment recommendations. Naturally, Sabrina occupied the center position. As she spoke about her most recent consultancy job, her fiancé, Todd, had his arm wrapped around her chair and was nodding. She sipped white wine and stated, "I'm aiming for a full promotion after this quarter. Naturally, I must first go over some tedious logistics material. Numbers are tiring, my God." She chuckled. Nobody else did. Then she glanced in my direction. "Could you please clarify if you manage logistics, Elena?" She cocked her head as if she were truly interested in the question. I gave a quiet smile. "That kind of thing?" She waved a hand and muttered, "Oh, right. I take it you work from home? So adaptable. Not having to cope with actual pressure must be pleasant." The top said, "Walker Family Property and Inheritance Trust, willful abandonment of beneficiary rights." I blinked. Leaning forward, Sabrina grinned broadly. "Actually, it's merely a formality. Facilitates the will's work. We get insight, you gain peace, we both benefit." Without looking into my eyes, my father added, "Sweetheart, you really don't need these things. You're doing great. Let your sister work with the family to create something." There was silence in the room. Nobody made a move. I turned to face the people I had known since I was a child. I had already produced birthday cards for these people, remained up to assist with essays. When their emergencies arose, they wired money. Their silent pocketbook had been me. Their silent emotional healers. They now desired to softly obliterate me. I shut the folder. "Place it on the table," I said. "I'll go over it later." Sabrina's eyebrow went up. "Why hold off? It is merely documentation." I got up, grinned. "That's right. Additionally, paperwork needs all of your focus." I glanced at my father, at my mom. I was handed contracts to vanish by the woman who used to braid my hair. "You won't be held up by me. I appreciate the dinner." I then left. Don't yell. No charges. Nothing but quiet. However, while they were planning how to exclude me, none of them were aware of it, and nobody at that table understood it. I had been observing already. Financing.recording. What about that folder? They believed it to be a trap, but it was not. I owned it. I did not shed a tear that night. I refrained from screaming. My best friend from college, Claire, was the only one who ever understood the true cost of being the trustworthy one. Yet I didn't even give her a call. I simply opened my laptop while sitting in my flat with my coat on and the lights off. By now, it was muscle memory. He opened the secure folder. Compare files. Examine the quarterly reports that I was not supposed to see, but I did. I was the one who created the system. The infrastructure was co-architected by me. Indeed, the press releases never included my name. It was a conscious decision. However, the contracts that are legally binding, the original documents, the proprietor of Walker Supply Logistics LLC, The business that 5 years prior had covertly taken over my father's faltering hardware distribution network? It was all mine. Sam's and mine. I browsed through files that displayed transfers' tiny, tidy payments. My father believed that a silent investor was the source of those. They were the ones that kept his company afloat when the market crashed. He didn't even ask who it was. The checks were just cashed. Unaware of the woman who signed off on her offer letter, only give Sabrina the impression that she was taking a step forward by joining the company later as a budget lead. Was me. It buzzed on my phone. My mother sent me a message. I hope it's not personal for you. Sabrina has simply experienced a lot recently. Our primary goal is to assist everyone in moving forward. Proceed. They constantly stated that after chopping me off, they claimed it was family responsibility. When Dad unintentionally used my card to pay off his gambling debt, I spent the night researching bank errors. But they never saw those evenings. When I started missing dinners, they didn't notice because I couldn't drive to the suburbs anymore after selling my car to pay off Mom's credit card debt. They didn't know how much it cost. They only knew that I always showed up. When did Sabrina enroll in that expensive MBA program? Her student debts were co-signed by me in private. 2 years later, she gave me a call and thanked me, but for nothing. Claimed that the scholarships had to have been awarded. I covered the remaining cost of Mom's operation when she was in the hospital following that fall. She never once inquired as to how I accomplished it. She simply stated, "Elena, you're always so trustworthy. Dependable. Not adored, not valued, simply put, used." However, this most recent stunt, the file, the documents, that was not the same. They were no longer merely taking advantage of me. I was being erased. So I inserted a tag after bringing up my secure files, phase 1 of family estate prep, because they needed to know something in order to play this game. Records were never kept solely by them. In an attempt to decompress, I spent the following morning strolling around the shores of Lake Michigan. The chill was beneficial. The stillness did the same. I was in a modern office suite downtown before midday. There, Claire was already enjoying a black coffee and looking over a collection of PDFs that I had shared the previous evening. "All right," she responded, squinting behind those flawless rectangular specs. "To begin with, you didn't overreact. They are attempting to restructure the trust without fully disclosing the beneficiaries, which is legal coercion disguised as family simplification." I muttered. I figured. "They believe I'm still employed by some random company as a data analyst," Claire grinned, "which isn't incorrect in theory. They simply aren't aware that you are the owner of the back-end architecture for half of the logistics activities in the city." I didn't answer. She tapped the file with her pen. "We might give a cease and desist order, or we could hold off." I raised my head. "Hold on, yes. Give the impression that you're thinking about it. Stop. We will then present your terms when they return." "How would those appear?" Claire leaned closer. "Easy. You have receipts with you. You give them the trust they attempted to rewrite, which is just the outward manifestation of your ownership. After that, you give them an option, a decision." She gave a nod. "I admire you, or lose everything." I took a car back to my childhood neighborhood that evening. Not to come, to watch. I parked across the street from my parents' house, heard the muffled sound of laughter coming from the living room, and watched as lights flashed on in the den. I witnessed my father pouring scotch. Sabrina was browsing through her phone when I looked at her. I watched my mother enter the kitchen and take out a bottle of wine, which I assumed I had sent over for Christmas. They appeared to be happy. I'm relieved, as if they had already accounted for me. I realized then that they weren't simply underestimating me. I was never seen by them. I was merely background to them. When things got tight, the female helped. The person who wasn't as flamboyant as Sabrina to make a difference. They were unaware that Elena Walker had been involved in 6 LLCs, that their accountant attempted to sell a tech logistics merger to outside investors, of which I was one of 3 important silent partners. They were unaware that their home had been refinanced on a short-term loan that I covertly took out during the pandemic under my fictitious business. They were unaware that their kitchen floor was already mine. Perhaps it was the most depressing aspect. They didn't try to take anything away from me. However, they were unaware of. I'm responsible for everything they previously had. I didn't respond to my mother's texts for the remainder of the week, didn't answer the ambiguous voicemail left by my father. ignored the three-word message from Sabrina. Have you made up your mind? Made up your mind? I wasn't going to sign a contract to work out. They asked me to willingly leave my grandmother's trust, which she established when I was 12 years old. She created this trust specifically for me. They now referred to it as an annoyance. I was aware of their actions. This was the last push. They believed they had me in a tight spot, both financially and legally and emotionally. Silence was always mistaken for capitulation. However, this time, the calm young girl who bore their responsibilities was no longer me. I had an idea this time. Claire and I were sitting in a meeting room in a high-rise building with a view of Lakeshore Drive. Windows from floor to ceiling. In the corner, an espresso machine is whirring. A marble table covered with legal files. She gave the final document a tap. Thus, are you certain? I gave a nod. Set off the clause. She furrowed her brow. The one about the benevolent redirection? Calmly, I reclined in the leather chair. 70% of the trust is transferred to charity if they push too much or file something dubious. My granny had a clear clause. Claire let out a breath. This will catch them off guard. I am aware. For a moment, we sat silently as the city spread out below us. Let's also prepare the secondary trust. The real one, I said quietly. She blinked. The personal one? Yes. I'd like to formally announce it. What matters is more than the trust my family attempted to undermine. It's the legacy I've already established in their absence. I want a record of it, safe distributed to my preferred recipient. Claire grinned gradually. Is Sabrina included in that? I stopped. Then, she will earn it if she earns it. By Friday, I got a second message, this one from my dad. Your mother is worried about your silence, Elena. Visit us on Sunday. Like family, we will discuss it. I looked at it for a long time. Don't apologize. No justification. It was merely a request cloaked in parental concern. This was always the case. They are silent after hurting. After taking it, they act as though nothing occurred. However, I concurred, not because I wanted to discuss it with someone. Since it was time for them to pay attention, it was rainy and gray on Sunday. I was dressed professionally and subtly, with my hair in a loose twist, a blue turtleneck, and black pants. Before I departed, Claire gave me a tiny envelope. Should they attempt to corner you once more? There were printed pages inside, legal information, the actual ownership records, a notarized document attesting to my position with Walker Supply Holdings, a balance sheet that has been amended. Additionally, at the top, co-owner and majority silent partner, Elena Walker. They were not supposed to witness it. Not quite yet. It served as a reminder to me that I wasn't going to be the assistant in that house. As the lady to whom they owed everything, I was entering. When I got there, they were all there. My mother pretended to be warm when she opened the door. Elena, my dear, you appear worn out. Do you eat enough? Traditional. My dad nodded sternly at me. Sabrina merely smirked as she gazed at me over her wine glass without even getting to her feet. I'm glad you came. We assumed you would want to. Act morally. It was there. You're not welcome. There was no recognition of the trap they had created the previous week. Just the presumption that I would fold, as I always did. It was a stressful dinner. Salmon, asparagus. The last time I gave them a care package that said, just thinking of you, one probably purchased them an expensive bottle of wine. They engaged in small talk, tried to divert attention. However, I didn't say much. Simply listen. Right up until dessert, when Mom produced the folder once more, which was the exact same as the one from Tuesday. She remarked nonchalantly, "It's just the final version. We changed the wording, cleaned it, simpler to sign. I examined it. Then take a swing at them." I grinned as well. I started, in a quiet but firm voice. I've been doing some paperwork of my own lately. Sabrina squinted her eyes. My dad moved a little. My mom blinks too quickly. I put my hands on the table and went on. I came to the realization that I had been covering your bills, tuition, and crises for years without ever questioning why no one had inquired about my need for assistance. My mother's mouth dropped open. I held up a hand, only a little. And now, you want me to sign away my final possession? Without speaking? Not having a lawyer? Not even to express gratitude? Quiet. So I got up, pulled Claire's envelope out. moved it across the table. You desired lucidity. It's there. You will discover the actual breakdown of ownership. And believe me, it's a larger portion than you may imagine. My dad took it up slowly. I scanned it. Is this a joke? He whispered. Sabrina bent forward. As she read the title, the color left her face. Calmly, I responded. You no longer have the power to make the decision. Yes, I do. I then looked at my mom. I was too quiet, you said. You mentioned that I stayed out of the spotlight. The person behind the scenes is typically the one keeping the entire show together. But you forgot. I grabbed my coat. Slowly, I buttoned it. We can play family honestly if you still want to. Has limits. With deference. However, if you ever attempt to deceive me into deleting myself once more, I looked them in the eyes. In addition to the trust, you will be seeing the disappearance of this family name. When I left, I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell, weep, or demand recognition. They could have written off the scene as Elena being dramatic, and it would have made things easier for them. No. I departed from the method I had discovered for surviving them. Keep quiet, managed, unalterable. However, the quiet I left behind that evening, the silence was different from what they were accustomed to. It weighed a lot. Consequential. Sabrina texted me for the first time the next day. What precisely are you attempting to demonstrate? Can we talk, or how are you? That's what it was. A query disguised as a covert allegation. An hour later, Mom sent the follow-up. Your dad is really unhappy. We were taken by surprise in our own house. I threw my phone aside after staring at the screen. They were upset because I didn't let them get away with betraying me, not because I had deceived them. Their mental image of Elena, the submissive one, the helper, the fixer, no longer matched the real one for the first time. Additionally, people dislike having their illusions shattered. This worsened toward the middle of the week. Sabrina made a straight call to Claire's office. In an attempt to stop my sister from making a regrettable legal mess, she left a message posing as a worried sibling. Claire sent it to me with the following subject line, "Now they're acting shadily." The whispers followed. My father had begun telling others that I was going through something, that I had become paranoid and obsessed with old wounds, according to a mutual friend. They were sowing mistrust, attempting to undermine me before I spoke the truth. They employed the same strategy when I initially stopped going to family gatherings. She's simply occupied. She never stops working. She is overly sensitive. She requires room. She is overly possessive. They pitied me but wanted me to be silent. Taken away but still helpful. No longer powerful but gone. In actuality, though, I wasn't broken. I was finished. On Thursday morning, Claire and I reconnected in her office. When I got there, she had already started serving coffee. Sit down, she urged. This is going to be fantastic. She sent me a printed email that her investigator had given to me. Behind my back, my mother had attempted to get in touch with the trustee to request a revision to the inheritance's payment pathway. With her lips twisted into a half smile, Claire remarked, "They actually used the phrase, just an update for efficiency." I gave a headshake. "They are wonderful." Claire bent over. "They didn't take you seriously. However, Elena, they didn't simply undervalue your intelligence. Your memory was underestimated." I stared at her, perplexed. She gave her temple a tap. "You remember everything about their actions. You covered all of the loans. Every signature felt like a guilt trip. Each time you arrived and received nothing in return." She was correct. Additionally, I was no longer bearing those recollections like scars. They were in my possession like proof. I texted Sabrina and my parents a group message that evening. This Saturday at 10:00 a.m. I will be holding a private review of the estate arrangements with the trustee and legal counsel. You're welcome if you want to be present and hear the truth. However, I'll be documenting everything. So be careful what you say, my mother answered almost immediately. A gathering? What was the purpose of the gathering? Did we not say everything? I didn't respond. This time, they would be the ones providing the explanation, not because I was at a loss for an explanation. The morning of Saturday was chilly and overcast. In the Loop, I leased a tiny private conference room with slick projectors, long wood tables, glass walls, and bottled water for each seat. To my right, Claire took a seat. To my left was the estate trustee, Linda Cho. a shrewd, gray-haired woman. The door opened at 9:58. My mother entered first, her lips pressed together. My dad trailed behind, his face inscrutable. With her sunglasses on, Sabrina followed, as if she were the misunderstood heroine in a courtroom drama. No one was greeted by them. They merely sat. I got up, pressed the remote control for the projector, and started. I said, "Let's be clear, even in my voice. The purpose of this gathering is documentation, openness, and a correction." Linda cleared her throat. As the Louise Walker Estates trustee, I can attest that the automatic legal redirection clause is triggered by any attempt to pressure or deceive the principal beneficiary into giving up rights. Sabrina laughed. "This situation is unbelievable. There was no coercion." Linda made a file click. An email from my father's address showed up on the screen. It said, "We believe Elena is overreacting and should not have complete authority over the estate. Kindly provide guidance on alternate distribution models that do not require her consent." That email alone is sufficient to warrant a petition for financial manipulation, Claire continued. My mom went pale. "You're distorting everything," Sabrina hissed. At that point, I got up, circled the table, and set down a printed folder. The package included a collection of bank statements, screenshots, receipts for payments, everything. I paid the tuition. I also paid the hospital bills. I was able to clean the credit card. Among the business debts I took on was a $15,000 wire payment that, after Sabrina was fired, went straight into her personal account under the name consultancy. Everyone gazed at it. At last, my mother muttered, Why did you keep all this?" I gave her a look. Not chilly, not upset. Just to be clear, I knew I would eventually have to prove that I wasn't the insane one. Only the silent one. There was silence in the room. Being the loudest voice was not my intention. I didn't have to, because I could never express what the documents in front of them said. Receipts, dates, move documents. 3 years of unspoken sacrifice. Nobody said anything, not even Sabrina. Claire folded her hands. Elena has grounds for civil litigation if it is made public. Perhaps even criminal charges under laws against financial coercion. My dad moved around in his chair. He appeared to have just realized that he had been carrying a live grenade and had taken it for a prize. "I was unaware of that wire," he said at last. "The majority of the details were handled by your mother. Normal." My mom's face became a little paler. She started to speak, but I spoke before her. "No. Refrain from splitting up the guilt, like leftovers after a dinner party. Both of you were well informed." Abruptly, Sabrina got to her feet. She screamed, "I refuse to sit here and face such accusations. We did everything for the family. Now that you have some leverage at last, you're exaggerating this." Calmly, I gazed at her. "There is no leverage here. This is the reality." She stopped. The words slammed into her. Because truth was always negotiable to individuals like her, Claire handed me a printed letter. It was a draft modification that confirmed the trust would remain unaltered, with clear limitations safeguarding my complete authority. I left it on the table. I require signatures. For the first time in years, my mother actually gave me a look. "Elena, we were wrong." I didn't wince. "You did indeed. However, this need not be a war. We still consider you our daughter." I gave a nod. "Then behave as though I were one. Not like an automated teller machine." Sabrina muttered a snicker but remained silent. The roles were flipped for once. They were silent. The terms belonged to me. My parents remained after the conference. Hatred buried away behind fancy shades. Sabrina stormed out first, sunglasses back on. At the door, my mother paused. "If we had only talked sooner," she continued quietly. "Elena, perhaps the first made a hard yet gentle cut. Mom, we did have a conversation about this topic. You simply didn't pay attention." I had a glass of red wine that evening while sitting on the balcony of my flat. Below, the lights of Chicago glistened like sequins. The city continued to move. "You got mail," she added, looking curiously at me as she handed it to me. No return address was provided. In meticulous calligraphy I hadn't seen in years, just my name, my dad's. I slowly opened it. "However, I am aware that I let you down when it counted. I apologize for it. I'm not going to ask for more. I wanted to let you know I saw you at last. Dad, my chest was devoid of pyrotechnics. No need to give him a call. However, there existed an improved option: silence. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that signifies the internal conflict has finally ceased demanding a confrontation. I still talk to Sabrina sometimes, primarily in text. She had returned to counseling, began instructing children on the weekends. She emailed me a picture of her bookshelf one day with Grandma's recipe box in the middle. There was a post-it note underneath it: silence does not equate to invisibility. I gazed at the image for a while, then simply responded, it didn't. I was in the cemetery one overcast afternoon, not for sorrow, not to cry. I wanted to express my gratitude. Grandma's favorite was a single pressed violet, which I brought. I knelt beside her stone and muttered, you were correct. I kept them. I recently discovered who I am. And that was the most genuine gift she ever gave me. Back at my flat that night, I brewed tea and sat on the couch with my laptop open next to me. This time, it was a note from a girl in Arizona. Hello, Elena. I saw your tale on the internet. I used to hear my dad say that I owed him everything. I eventually created a bank account in my own name after listening to you talk. I am aware that it is little. However, it belongs to me. Warmth flooded my chest as I grinned. No cheers, not a single headline, just evidence that my life wasn't in vain, that what they attempted to destroy can give rise to something lovely. I once believed that being strong meant remaining silent. But now that I know, knowing when your silence is no longer a shield is what makes you strong, but consent for other people to continue harming you. And I took that authorization away, permanently. Not in retaliation, not angry, but with boundaries, clarity, and a life that isn't about being the good guy anymore. Thus, if you're paying attention, if you were in my position, let me state this: you don't act dramatic. You're not self-centered. The fact that you finally asked, what about me, is not an issue. You simply have the courage to end the cycle. And that isn't a sign of weakness. That is the start of generational healing.